Okay, so what are some of your gifts?
So my gifts. So I love playing guitar.
Okay.
One of my gifts.
I said gifts,
Gifts.
like natural. I'm kidding.
It doesn't matter. Like
No,
what gifts.
no, I was joking.
I got you.
Yeah. Okay.
I
it
got
was
you.
a bad joke.
All right. I love playing guitar. I'm a runner. Love running. I like playing basketball. I know those are like so gifts. Will be more running. I'm academically gifted. I'm good at math. Believe it or not, most people are probably mad at me right now because of that, because everyone else has to struggle. And I work hard. I'm not like one of those kids, but I also, and it's a lot easier to me. Also, gifts, it depends on the definition of gifts, because if it's just gifts of like talents, or it could be gifts, physical gifts, what specifically are you looking for? I must ask that.
Any
before.
gifts?
Anything. So those were gifts. I meant talent. Talents. I'll go physical gifts. Obviously I have a car.
Limit it to 5.
Okay, limit 5. All right. So we got being good at guitar, running, got a car, gift of knowing Christ, and gift of having my sins forgiven.
I mean, you didn't say your family.
Family is a gift.
But okay.
That's a definite
that
one.
would have been on mine.
If I was doing my top 5 gifts, I would have to think about that. And obviously,
I said top 5.
Oh yeah.
I said 5.
You just said give me 5, so I just named 5.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I made this more complicated than it was supposed to be.
I mean, you're good. It's what you thought of. If you're watching his family, he didn't think of you top 5. His car came first.
Yeah, that's a lie.
His car came first.
He's lying.
He
didn't say top 5. Right, he said
I didn't say top
name
5.
5.
But the top 5, the first 5 that he thought of, you were not in.
The reason they're not gifts is because they're so much better than a gift.
Oh, okay.
It's like one of those gifts
so
that
you're saying Jesus saving you is only a gift. It's not so much better than a gift.
You're right. Good point. Okay, I got you.
No,
I got you.
I'm kidding.
I know you're messing.
I'm teasing him.
He's messing with me. I'll get him later.
So let's see. Do. Copyright. Okay. So tonight on our board, may or may not be the same night as the last episode, because we just kind of wanted to go and keep going. Tonight we're going to be talking about
V.
It's a V. Mm-hmm. Let's see if I can spell.
You're doing good so far.
The value of gifts, which in short means stewardship.
Very cool.
Very cool. I can spell.
Alright, so I think before we start off, I don't know if you've had anything, but let's define what gifts means, especially in context when it comes to this.
Do it.
No,
you do it.
You want me to do it?
You brought it up, you gotta do it.
Alright, well.
You gotta do the work.
Okay, so I'm the one doing this. Alright, so gifts, when we think gifts, first thing that comes to most people's heads, like Christmas gifts.
Birthday.
Okay. Birthday, Christmas, you think of all these things, and but what really talking about here, value of gifts, it goes to deeper, and like I mentioned, like not only like the skills you have, and then we could talk about even spiritual gifts, which obviously when it comes to revival, the spiritual gifts begin to flood people, like it talks about in Acts, your sons, your old men and women will dream dreams, and your sons and daughters shall prophesy. Like the gifts are shown there, like dreams and prophecy. Those are spiritual gifts.
Yeah.
And we see that come to light in revival. Like that's like God almost like, that's I think that's Peter mentioning that, if I'm correct. And it just shows how that prophecy talks to like the end times revival, the end times where people, the Christians, it may not be a lot, even though it does talk about there will be a multitude that cannot be counted after the tribulation in heaven serving the Lord, that will be of all tribes, tongues, nations.
Yeah.
And which is so cool. So it will be a lot of people. Just may not seem like it because sometimes the darkness can overwhelm, but all these people are flooded with gifts, right, in a revival. And so gifts are spiritual gifts, but there are also other things. They're, obviously spiritual gifts will be the first things to go to, but be anything that is given and established by God for a purpose. And like it goes back to stewardship, using them for others, having this attitude in Christ Jesus. Jesus walking on the earth, he was a steward of every gift God had ever given him. Whether it was he was a carpenter, he was probably loving to the people he worked for. And not only that, but then he was the one who raised Lazarus from the dead. That's an amazing gift. That authority that was given by God, he used that in a way that showed perfect stewardship. He also did the same with just a simple carpenter job.
So you talked a lot about gifts, but you didn't define it.
Define it. All right.
Define it. So that's what you said you were going to do.
You're right. I went off track. So a gift is something established by God in your life, in someone's life, that is used to encourage, restore, and unite people under God. So whether it's restoring people, like the way you love somebody draws their attention to God, and God then begins to work in their life, kind of like the seed and the sower.
So for his purpose?
Yes, for his purpose.
Okay, so let me get this straight. I'm gonna underline it. You're saying that a gift, and this is how you would define a gift, is something given to us to be used for the purpose to glorify God.
Yes.
All right, so that can include our lives, our money, our cars, our relationships, and our time.
Sure.
Sure?
So I'm not
Sure,
specific
sure.
enough.
Or yes. Or
I'd say I'm not specific enough. I'd say it's under that context, but that's a hard one. You know, I'm honestly, I don't know if I can put the other definition, but I know I can get to it's used to glorify God, and it's specifically given to us. But you're right. You know, technically we have time and money, and those are not necessary.
Yeah.
They can. I don't know. It depends. Again, it really depends.
I think
gifts is such a broad
times
definition.
are a gift, or time is a gift. If we're looking at anything given to us to be used for the glory of God, then time is given to us because time can be taken away.
It's true.
Money can be given to us because money can be taken away. So I guess, essentially, with this pattern I'm saying, if it can be taken away, it can be given. But I don't know if that's... You think that's right, or what were you about to say?
I would say that's kind of where my thinking was going, is like, even the relationship we have can be taken away, and those are gifts in a way, valuing those relationships.
It can be taken away by us denying it.
Yeah.
But
just like most people in a revival, when we realize the value of gifts, what gets better in people's lives. Like if there's a revival in someone's life, their relationships get better. And whether, to some degree, we mentioned Matthew 10, where sometimes it divides you from people because you side with Christ.
Well, you realize the value of life, and
life of money.
the gift that life brings, and that life is.
It's Jesus.
It's a wonderful life.
But yeah, I would say that would be my idea with the value of gifts, is that they're used for the glory of God, but there's it's such a variety of things that can be used for gifts, whether it's a relationship, or whether it's maybe material, or it's again a spiritual gift, or maybe a talent.
Do you take your gifts for granted?
Yes, I do at times, and I hate to say it because a lot of times, especially like best example, it's odd, but it's not at the same time. You know, when we talk about my family, I know we were joking about that, but it's easy to take granted the relationships in my family, especially with some of my brothers, and siblings that I take for granted, because instead of cherishing those and realizing that God put them there for a reason in my life, so that I could, not only be a light to them, but for them to be a light to me. Sometimes they see things in my life that I can't see about myself.
All right, real fast joke. I'm sorry.
I'm ready.
Okay. What type of countertops are your or what type of countertops do you have?
Granite.
Do you take those for granted?
That's a good one. All right, I'll give him that. That wasn't too bad. That was too bad.
That was like a 4 out of 10.
Okay, it was better than some of the others.
Maybe what do you mean some of the others? Are you taking my jokes for granted?
I am.
Oh, okay. There you go. But I'm sorry. You were saying how much you value your family. Go back to that.
Yeah. So I was going back to, I do take them for granted, and if we stay with the same definition of gift, which is right, whether it could be relationships, time, money, goes to spiritual gifts, goes to talents. when we take them for granted is when we like it goes back to value. It goes back to we forget our identity, we forget the importance of what we've been given, and we forget like the impact. It's funny you mentioned It's a Wonderful Life because it's the greatest example.
That's what I was. I'm sorry. Continue.
You want to talk about it?
No, you talk about it.
You want me to? Are you sure? Okay.
Well, okay, I'll talk about it.
Yeah, you go ahead because you mentioned it.
Because I mean, it was just kind of a pun, I guess, but puns work. We take puns for granted. Because he is basically, I don't know if you've seen It's a Wonderful Life. If you haven't, I don't know if you're American. I'm kidding. But it is a very classic old movie. I believe, is it James Stewart or
George Bailey?
No, the actor.
Ooh, I if it's an actor, I don't know it.
Okay, I don't.
I know George Bailey's main character.
I feel like it's like Jimmy Stewart or something like that. James or Jimmy, I don't know. But what was I gonna say? Basically, he is thrust into an alternate reality, and everything is taken away from him, or not taken away from him. What he thinks he wants, he ends up getting. Isn't that right? Mm-hmm. And he realizes that he was truly blessed with what has already been given to him, and how it's truly a wonderful life. And how, even though, as we talked about last night for these people, but a few minutes ago for us, as we talked about, we take things for granted, and we may think and we may see that there's a best way, but it may not be God's way, because God's way is truly the best way. And I'm honestly thinking more about the VeggieTales version of It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Meaningful Life, but how you got Larry going down the railroad tracks, and how there's God's way and there's Larry's way, or I don't know what his name is. It's probably Lawrence. But you're going left, and that's Larry's way. Right is God's way. And ultimately, he realizes that the right way is right. But
and that's good. Just talks. George Bailey lost sight of the gifts he'd been given, and not only his family, but like his ability to unite people was amazing. When you watch the movie, he really was the only reason that Potter had not just ravaged the town.
Just like Larry. And he united the sports team, but I mean it's basically a ripoff, or it's a high quality cartoon edition. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yes, no, it's awesome, but I think because we're not like the all-star, we're not the main guy, we forget that we still have an impact.
What about whenever you get that thing that you want? Does it have value still? Does it gain value, or do you think it loses it?
When we get what we want, what do you mean?
Like, let's say I wanted a Ferrari. Okay? I went out, I got a Ferrari. Do you think that would gain value for me? Or do you think, and we'll say sentimental, or like whether or not we take it for granted, do you think that would gain value, or do you think it would lose value?
Lose, like that, a Ferrari would lose or gain if you buy one. I would say, start to some degree lose, I would say. And what I mean by that is everyone loves Ferraris, right? Like we're car lovers.
I'm not talking about big. Money wise.
Yeah, you're talking about more like your value of the car.
Yeah. Like
when we see Ferrari, we're like, whoa, so cool, and so we have that appreciation, that value for it. But then I think when you get one, you're like, oh, this is awesome. Like I'll admit, at first it kind of spikes up, but then the truth is it's a normal car.
Yeah.
It's not. It's cool. It's different, but it's not like anything special, really, when I'm honest. When it gets down to it, it doesn't solve the problems of your life. A lot of people have Ferraris tend to be, it's funny, statistics show that the richer tend to be more depressed. People who have a lot more Ferraris. So instantly, I think it loses value, because what you learn is that, especially a lot of people will buy more and get more out of a desire to fulfill the void in their hearts.
Yeah.
And so that's why we begin to lose the value for our gifts.
What do you think satisfies that void in your heart?
Well, a relationship with Jesus Christ is what satisfies. And the reason it satisfies is because we were created by design to be in full relationship with God and with the Father, the Son, the Spirit, united, walking with Him daily, just as Adam and Eve walked in the garden. And when we lost that void, everything began to decay. So it doesn't matter what it is in our life, it decays. Like, I'm getting older, even though I'm, young guy right now, feeling, feeling energized. There's gonna become a time, if the Lord has grace for me and allows me to live longer, He's the one who numbers my days, right? But, I will begin to decay bodily.
Yeah.
And even as a Christian, you will.
Physically sounds better.
Physically, you're right.
Because
my spirit is reviving and is being restored to life, right? And our bodies will be in the when Jesus returns and all bodies are raised.
Yeah.
But it just shows that decay started when that relationship was cut off. It was not there before that.
Yeah.
Nothing decayed before until we lost that. We were separated from God.
Sorry to ask you all the hard questions tonight. You're welcome to ask me questions.
Yes,
but,
if I think of any, I'll shoot it at
you. Do you think you're taking your walk with Christ for granted?
I think at this moment, I would say I'm not, but 3 hours ago, possibly. And as I kind of mentioned, this week's been a rougher week. And even though we've been, touring colleges and some exciting stuff, there's been this pressure, there's been this, this doubting, and there's also being revealed this sin. And a lot of times I allow myself to get so busy that I do take it for granted. That instead of realizing that as I'm making these decisions, that I don't need to be, I have a Savior who will guide me. That I have a relationship with someone who knows way better than me, whose ways are higher than my ways, whose thoughts are higher than my thoughts. And I would say that's the key for me, is why, then today God humbled me before I came, which was beautiful. God really showed me a lot of grace. He showed me my sins. He allowed me to confess, and then He showed me grace. He lifted me up He lifted my head in my sorrow, when I realized that I'd so gotten entangled that I had taken for granted the relationship that I so desperately need. It's really easy, especially since the enemy wants you to, because if he can get you to take for granted your relationship, he can try and separate you, which we know we know Jesus is the good shepherd who will lay down his life for his sheep, and we know that he chases after the one out
it's
of
a
the
narrow
99.
path. We need him to guide us to walk on it, and if not, we'll get distracted. We'll take it for granted, and we'll get off track.
Yes.
But
how do you feel like you take things for granted?
I'm gonna shoot back. Question. Okay.
Yeah, you asked.
I mean, yeah.
I just,
I know. I asked you to. So technically, it's my question for me. No, I'm kidding.
Technically.
So, I mean, I would definitely say I take things for granted. I mean, as I talked about, I guess last night for you guys, I mean, I take it for granted, but in the same way, it kind of, I guess you need that strength from Christ to guide you on how to use what he has given you, because we take everything for granted, but if we want to be truly good stewards of it, it's something that we need to surrender and have our eyes opened on how to do and use.
It's true. And I don't think as Christians, I don't think God a lot of times he delivers us from getting the opportunity. A lot of times he allows us to fall flat on our face, kind of like I did today. Yeah. So in a way, I kind of didn't, because God allowed me to fall and just, he allowed me to fall and to realize my sin. He allowed me, and he did that out of love, and I was really thankful for it.
All right.
Simon's got something.
Here
he comes.
I do. Okay.
I'm excited.
Boom, clap the sound. No, okay. All right, so what you just said reminded me of a poem I wrote. So, I'm going to read it. You're welcome, bud. You're the first one to hear it. All right. It's called Cornered. When I feel like I am cornered on my left and on my right, which way should I go? Which way should I fight? Little Dr. Seuss over here.
I love it.
Okay. The right seems hard, and the left seems like doom. But there's only one way I forgot about, and that's that I can look up to you. When I feel like I'm surrounded, remind me, Lord, to get down on my knees so that I can look up. The wind that moves from corner to corner, and the waves from side to side. Although they may seem cornered, they are so low that they are low, so that a higher power may lift them up. When I feel cornered on my left and on my right, give me the strength to humble myself so that I can look up. And I'll read the verse under that and I'll explain how you triggered that thought. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength, and they shall mount up with wings like eagles, and they shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint. Isaiah 40:31. And I think you said something like how we need to humble ourselves, or you said something along the lines of that. And it made me think about how I was going to say originally how we need to humble ourselves so that way we can look up. But then it just reminded me of that, and how even in times of trials and of hardship, we may feel cornered, but we can take for granted the fact that sometimes we need to fall down and we need to be lowered in order to look up, in order to overcome the obstacle of the corner.
Yeah, and
But
it goes right back. This all ties back to the value of the gifts. Like
Yeah.
that verse really hit me hard. You know, those who hope in the Lord, those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength, will soar on wings like eagles. Right. So
Yeah.
when we wait on the Lord, when we hope in the Lord, when we see the value of these gifts, when our eyes are open, right, we're relying on God, our eyes are open, and we see the value, we begin to soar. We begin to fly again. We were meant to fly. We were created to fly.
Yeah, and it's a gift.
And it's a gift.
And
when we take that for granted is when we feel cornered and we shut down. Really, it goes back to this quote I love to use by Edmund Hillary, one of my favorite quotes. He's the guy who climbed Mount Everest, if you don't know who he is.
He is.
First guy, and he made this quote. He said it afterwards. He got interviewed, and he said there was a conversation. He said, "It is not the mountain that we conquer, but ourselves." And it goes back to when we're cornered, we feel like everything around us is the problem.
yeah,
The truth is, it's in us. It's our lack of belief. Like when Peter fell in the water, Jesus didn't say, "Oh, stupid waves, you sucked in Peter." Just to be real, he said, "You of little faith." And that hits me, because like really, the waves weren't. Peter was going to be able to do it because of his belief. He had his eyes fixed on Jesus, and
Yeah.
when he had his eyes fixed, when he was believing, when he was not doubting, when he was not allowing the wind and the waves to get in his way, or to get in his face and become his attention, it was all good.
And I believe I may have said this before, but if I haven't, it's okay. Either way, it's okay. But if we put our focus on what we don't have, then we'll kind of, the value of what we do have will be lost. I mean, that probably could have been said easier. If we put our eyes on what we don't have, then what we do have we'll take for granted. But
it goes back to what we mentioned, our trials and the things we're going through, like the things you're experiencing. Truth is, you kind of feel that. You feel like you're looking at what could have been, and the truth is that
God knows what's best.
Yeah, and He has something now. He still doesn't want you to take for granted what you've been given. You've got this American Campfire revival, which is moving in people, and which is not only that, it's an act of obedience, which alone is a gift, and which is glorifying to God, no matter what happens or how far the impact is. And for me, it's the same way when there's things in my life, like the thing I'm waiting on next week, and what I'm hoping to be able to use to boost what God is doing in my life. But the truth is, I'm not the one supposed to be doing it. The Lord is. So I need to wait on the Lord. And yes, I may not get what I want, but guess what? I can still soar on wings like eagles. Because if I wait on the Lord, then I can believe, even though I'll have that temptation to doubt. I probably will struggle a little bit if I don't get what I'm waiting on.
Yeah.
But that's because of my flesh, right? I'm a sinner, and I'm still, as a believer, I'm still fighting through that. And that's part of the walk as a Christian, and learning to value the gifts, knowing that sometimes we're supposed to be open-handed, right? As Christians, whatever God puts in our hand, we use, but we also don't close it, our fist around it, because it's His, and He's the one who put it in our hand, and we should always remember that. Just like my legs, like I mentioned last
Yeah.
video, I think I was a runner, right? But my legs.
I think it was the start of this one.
Was it the start of this one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No,
But
you're good.
as a runner, my legs move because the atoms in my body are holding together. And the fact is, my legs move because God allows them to move. He's the one who set in motion all things, right?
Yeah.
And in Him, all things hold together, as it says in Colossians 1. And so that gift alone is from Him, so that I should be open-handed. God may want me to stop. Athletes get injured, right? And I'm not saying that over myself. The Lord's going to,
Yeah.
keep me healthy, I believe, but
Like,
also allowing myself not to hold on to that gift.
What's his name? Like back in like middle school for me at least. He was like the New York Giants guy. He was like Odell or is that his name?
Cruz? Is it?
No, it was like Odell or Obell. It was something like that. But you like caught the football one-handed.
Oh, Odell Beckham Jr. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking of somebody else.
No, you're good.
I knew.
Like I think he got hurt or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't really know what that has to do with anything, but basically how God gives and He can take away, and we just often take that for granted. So this is just a reminder that we don't need to take that for granted, and in fact, if we bring that before the Lord, He can show us how to use what He has given us. And by lowering ourselves, it allows us to look up and overcome obstacles. But I feel like that's a good summary.
I think that is a great summary.
All right.
I think it's the right line. Just even the idea of looking up reminds me of when I mentioned God's ways are higher than our ways.
Yeah.
So when we humble ourselves and look up, we are acknowledging that, and that's when our gifts can be used the way they were meant to be.
Yeah. All right. Well, you want to pray us out?
I would love to.
All right.
Dear Father, I just ask that your Holy Spirit would come over me right now. I ask that you would speak through me, that it would not be my words, just as you told Jeremiah in Jeremiah 1 in his calling. You told him that he would not speak, but that he would speak what you speak, that he would repeat what you say to him. God, and that is this life, Lord, for Christians, that we listen to you, we hold on to your words, because man does not live on bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of God. I pray that people watching and myself and my friend here would we would soak onto your words. We would hold on to them and live off of them, Lord, because your words bring life to our very soul. You are the bread of life. You are the way, the truth, and the life, Lord. And I ask that this would be made known in this dark world, God, that your name would reign. We know every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that you are Lord of all. And I ask that you would just continue to give us and open our eyes to the value of the gifts our gifts have. Lord, I ask that we would see the value of our gifts, whatever they may be, that we would not close our fists around the gifts, Lord, but that we would have them open-handed, knowing that you are the giver of all good things, and you are the one who takes them away, not for the purpose of causing sadness in our life, Lord, but so that your kingdom may move and that your name may be glorified. And sometimes it requires gifts being taken away, and I ask that you would humble us as we think we know better than you, and forgive me for the times I have done so, Lord. And I thank you so much for this time, getting to talk and just talk about you, Lord. It's so important to know you and to get to see your Spirit work in my life, Lord, and my friend's life, and the people who are watching, Lord. I ask that you would bless them today, that you would be with them, and that your presence would move in their lives. And in your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching American Campfire Revival Night 51.
Woo!
If you want to stay tuned, just go down there, click subscribe and the bell. That's all you got to do.
Awesome.
Adios.